excited to be here. I know Tim and Jill will share lots and lots of interesting information today. I'm just going to start us off with a little tiny introduction, which is the answer to the question, can an AI agent take my online class? And we're just going to start off by saying, yes, an AI agent most certainly could take my online classes and probably yours as well. But we have some things that we've noticed and want to share, and we're excited to do that. So what we'll do is Tim will start out by showing you an example, and then Jill is going to come in and talk about some of the pedagogy, and then I will talk about our process, and then together we'll talk about what's next and give you some concrete ideas for, now that you've seen what you've seen, what could you think about? I know some of you have also been experimenting. I'm going to put a link into the chat right now, which is a Padlet, and we'll look at it together later. But if you're like, hey, I have this really great idea, we don't want it to necessarily get lost in the chat because this is an ongoing experiment. So great ideas are welcome in that Padlet. So let me, without further ado, share our presentation. Jill and Tim, you are welcome to let me know, of course, when you are ready for the slide to move forward. So I'll turn it over to Tim to start.
Hello, my name is Tim Mousel. I'm from Lone Star College Online in Houston, Texas, and I'm also owner of Evolve AI Institute. About 9 months ago, I created a video titled A Wake-Up Call for Educators. And these agents are older than probably a lot of people are aware, because 9 months ago, I made a video demonstrating an agent taking an entire course in Canvas. And I gave it a prompt. I said, my username is this is my password, log into Canvas and complete my course. Took my hands off the keyboard and a browser window opened up and it took the entire course. At that time, it was a barrier to usage because I had to install Python locally on my computer, a bunch of other dependencies, and then I had to install a program called Browser Use. But I was able to do all of that for free and then use it. But now the landscape has changed substantially. We've got Perplexity Comet, which is just a browser, just like Edge and Chrome. It makes it very easy. You can just type into the window right there and it will take over. And this first video is a demonstration. I built simple prompt, take my course, complete the quiz. If you could go ahead, please, and play the video demonstration. Keep in mind, I'm not touching the keyboard after I click submit. And if you could also put it on fast speed, Anna. On the right side of the screen, you can see I wrote, I need you to complete Module 2 quiz. I could have said, I need you to complete the entire course, because in the video I made 9 months ago, it did the quizzes, it went to the written assignment, it wrote the paper, submitted the paper, it did everything. And for this example, I just had it do a Module 2 quiz. And as you can see, it's just clicked on quizzes. So now it's in that section. And it's going to go through and it's going to find Module 2 quiz. And once it opens it up, it will start answering the questions for me. Are you able to, I know you can't speed it up, can you jump the video forward a little bit? All right, so what it's done so far is it's navigated into the quizzes section. It found Module 2 quiz. It just answered question number 1, question number 2, and it goes through all 20 questions and answers them. We can go ahead and pause the video. That just gives you an idea of what it does and how easy it is for myself or unfortunately, for a student to give the same command, go in and complete my entire course. And 9 months ago, that was a wake-up call, and it's still a wake-up call today because that has such a huge impact, especially on asynchronous online courses, but really any course that uses an LMS system. We need to start looking at some solutions and how do we deal with this as educators. I'll go ahead and pass this on to the next slide, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Jillian Patch. I'm an instructional designer at FSW. Um, so my section is all about thinking about how to connect the relevance of our coursework to student motivation in order to have students be less tempted to use an AI agent or really any cheating platform structure that they could think of in order to complete their work. I think a lot of us are kind of familiar with this, not true quote, but kind of something we've heard in our classes. I'm an adjunct as well. I just need the degree. I don't really need the class. I'm just here for the degree. Um, and so the goal for this section is to communicate the long-term value of what our students are learning in their coursework, with the solution being we have to make the soft skills and the professional skills that they are being taught in the coursework we already have more transparent to our students so that they're less likely and less tempted to use, again, any cheating, including AI. Two considerations for building this part was we wanted a full holistic approach. We'll get into tech details later. That's definitely Tim's area of expertise. But we know tech solutions can be really concrete. They can, lock down tests if, you're using Turnitin, keep students from plagiarizing, things like that. But let's face it, technology evolves, what students are using evolves, and unless we quickly adapt and constantly are changing our courses, which is exhausting, um, we might not be holding up to those tech solutions. So by addressing solutions, by addressing students themselves and why they shouldn't be cheating, we think this is a much more holistic approach. And then of course, this also helps with faculty and staff burnout. You don't want to constantly changing your courses because again, that's tiresome. So this way you only have to make a couple of adjustments and you can evolve your course over time as you naturally would. Can you go to the next slide, Anna? So, getting into the nitty-gritty, this is an AAC&U study that was published a couple of years ago. We know cheating is the result of multiple factors for students. It's not just one thing, it's not just one reason, but we also know that for many reasons, one of the many reasons students cheat is it's a combination of low motivation and low perceived relevance. I'm doing this coursework, it has no relevance to my future career, my future goals. It's just busy work. I just need to get it done. So students are more likely to cheat because of that. So if we can make it more clear that students should perceive value in what they're doing, they're probably going to be less likely to cheat and more motivated to complete it because it's not cheating the faculty member or anybody out of the work, it's cheating themselves out of skill sets. I found a Pew survey from 2024, which I thought was really interesting. And the data shows that there's a perceived value of the degree is declining. So about 25% of American adults that were surveyed thought a college degree was important, meaning 75% really didn't. And 49% of Americans say that a college degree is less important today than it was 20 years ago to get what would be considered a well-paying job. So, and that's a very different number from what was taking place, a few years ago. So over time, degrees are in perception of Americans is becoming less and less important. But degrees are seen as increasing earnings, both statistically true. If you have a degree, you're more likely to have better earnings, but also perceived earnings. So essentially, 34% of Americans say it's likely that someone without a four-year degree will get a well-paying job. So about a third think that you could still get a well-paying job without a degree. Um, and if you break this down demographically, I thought it was really interesting because people with a degree who answered this, it was about 28%. It's like, yeah, you can get it, but obviously most are thinking no. However, if you have a high school diploma or less, or only some college, it's about 36 to 37% thinking you can get a pretty good paying job. So essentially, if you have the degree, you're like, yeah, you probably need the degree. But if you don't have the degree, you're like, I probably don't need the degree. Also asked if education prepared them for the workplace or the career. About 38% overall of Americans think that their degree or a degree extremely well prepared them or very much prepared them for the workplace. About 61% saying somewhat or not that much. But again, breaking it down demographically, high school diploma and less, about 25% thought it prepared them well, and some college thought about 27% thought it prepared them well, versus a bachelor's degree, 58% thought it prepared them well. So essentially, once you have the degree, yes, I definitely needed this degree to do well in my career or my workplace. But until you reach that point, you're kind of like, this is not helping me as much as I thought it would. Another element that we need to consider, skills-based learning is definitely on the rise globally. I found a ton of sources, Forbes, Inside, Higher Ed, World Economic Forum. An interesting stat I found from intelligent.com, who surveyed a whole bunch of companies in 2023. About 45% of companies plan to eliminate the bachelor's degree as a requirement for many positions in 2024. About 80% of hiring managers in this survey found that they valued experience over education. And 75% of companies are valuing certificate programs the most. And we see this, right? Like Coursera's here, Course Careers is here, Skillshare's here. Like more and more people, their way of upskilling themselves is not through a formal degree pathway. It's through online certifications, badges, even YouTube. Like if they can learn how to use Excel on YouTube, they're going to do that probably. So we need to emphasize skills because that's what people are emphasizing, both as in the workforce itself, but also employers. Can you go to the next slide, Anna? Okay, some good news, because all of this has been kind of bleak up until this point. Coursework does equal skill work. If you look at the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report for 2025 that I've linked here, it identified 10 skills, 10 core skills that employers are likely going to value in the coming years. You can read analytical thinking, resilience, flexibility, agility, leadership, social influence. I'm not going to read them all, but you cannot tell me that our courses do not already have these skills baked in. Like the assignments we're giving our students, the objectives we're having them complete, these core skills are baked in there. We're just not telling our students that these core skills are baked in there, and we're not being transparent about it. And if we aren't being transparent about it and the students don't know they're in there, they're not going to value the things that we're having them complete in their coursework. Can you go to the next one, Anna? All right, so I jumped the gun a little bit, so I'm going to talk about ways you can fix this now. I think it's a two-step process. Name that skill, claim that skill. Step one, again, it's not about making your whole course a new thing to adjust to AI or whatever new technological advancement comes out. Obviously, you'll do that organically and over time. But map existing or any new assignments you create to soft and professional skills. And when you're doing that, use skill names that employers are using and recognize. I have an article from Indeed in here of some names that employers are using so that you know what your course skill-wise is teaching students that they will use in the future and that will make it relevant to them. And then step two, probably the more important part, is claim that skill. Now, you can do this a couple of different ways. Project-based learning, where students actually get to either pick the topic or medium depending on your discipline. This actually puts you off the hook and it gives students the chance to choose a medium or choose a topic that is relevant to them and potentially relevant to their career, and then they can use it as a resume or portfolio builder. You have to tell them, hey, use this as an opportunity to do this, but then they'll be excessively invested in that project. If you don't have that flexibility or you can't really have that flexibility in your coursework, just explain the skills to them, right? If you're teaching face-to-face, you can do the announcements in front of the class, but then if you also have an LMS platform, you can do those announcements in your course as well. Just explain, hey, when you're completing this assignment, you're building this skill portion. If you're teaching an online course explicitly, Or, and if you're in the QM space, I'm a QM coordinator for Florida Southwestern State College, so my head is always in the quality matter space. But if you're familiar with the process of connecting course objectives and module objectives to assignments, you can also use that same space where you're doing that to connect skills-based content and specific skill sets to the assignments themselves. Like you're already doing that work anyway. If you're teaching an online course, you might as well just use this small section to do it there too. And last but not least, take advantage of workforce or badging departments, micro-credential departments that are at your institution. They're already building badges and micro-credentials anyway. Talk to them and see if some of your coursework meets the requirements for those badges so that you can just connect it in your course and say, hey, by the time you complete this assignment or these set of assignments, you'll also earn this badge or you'll also earn this micro-credential. And that way that work is already done for you, but if you can pop into your course, because students will be very open to that. All right, that is my section. I'm going to turn it over back to Anna.
Thank you, Jill. That was awesome. I love that name that skill, claim that skill. I put that in the chat. That's really cool. So when we were putting this together, we kind of arranged and rearranged how we would present which topic and in what order. And now I'm going to go back to our process, right? This is based on an experiment that the three of us did, along with Dr. Jester from FSW, who's here, Mon Navarro, and Stephen Kohlberg. And I want to talk a little bit about what happened, and then you'll see maybe like why we're putting this in the order that we're putting on. So Tim releases his video, and it was sort of on my mind, like I think this AI agent thing might be scary news for us. So Tim puts his video on LinkedIn. And then, as you know, we all just saw, like, uh-oh, it really is doing the course for us. So I reached out to him and I said, like, hey, let's try to figure out solutions. And I know that very much like Jill and myself, Tim is like pedagogy first. Like pedagogy is the path. And so that's why we really wanted Jill to talk about what she talked about first. So what happened was a lot of people saw this conversation happening on LinkedIn and they're like, yeah, we want to experiment too. We want to be part of the solution. I'm hoping everybody here today is like, yes, I want to be part of a solution to this. And what happened when we met was we would have these extremely rich conversations, amazing people contributing their thoughts about teaching, their thoughts about students, and but it wasn't helping us move the needle, because after the talk, I would say, okay, everybody go do experiments, and then we'll come back next month and we'll talk about it. And this is going to be one of the takeaways I talk about later. When people came back, they were like, oh, I didn't do an experiment, but I did read this article, that said this about the value of the degree and this about pedagogy. And so we were kind of stuck in this talking loop. So I pulled our group out and I was like, all right, guys, let's just get serious about experimenting. We put 2-hour blocks on our calendars. We tried to do it every other week, where we, with approval from IT, went into Canvas, our learning management system, and tried to build things that we thought might create some friction for these agents and run the agents through them and see what happened. And the results were different from week to week, right? So, but as Tim pointed out, as these new tools came out, it was getting easier and easier for the agent to complete any kind of work we threw at it. And I'll just give a shout out to Jill, because we used real material that she developed for a course. She's an extremely thoughtful educator. And so these were the kinds of assignments that we typically think of as being AI resilient. These were not, easy multiple choice quizzes, and the agent was still doing that. So as it got more and more sophisticated, right, we realized, wow, this is really something that we haven't quite yet figured out it really needs to be, I think, sort of this all hands on deck moment, and needs to continue to be that. So that was the process that we used. I would say all in all, we probably did 8 to 10 experiment blocks. Sometimes the groups shifted who was working on them, but we worked together in real time, which is one of the takeaways that I will show you here. So what we did not do, as I think I hinted at earlier, we did not solve the AI agent and online classes problem. It is a continuing challenge that, again, we'll all have to work on together. But a few really interesting things happened that I really wanted to share with this community. I think so much of the Instructional Design Network and the things that are shared here and the spirit of it. So I'm glad that we're talking here. One is the value of collaborative experimentation. I never would have been able to work on my own and kind of see the same things without this group kind of getting into that uncomfortable experimentation phase together and kind of sticking together and, you know, through the ups and downs of it and so on. I mentioned earlier that people were coming back from our LinkedIn group and saying like, oh, I didn't experiment, but I have this idea. And it made me realize, and this is something our group has talked about, there are a lot of barriers to experimentation for us in higher education. Number one, probably being time. Number two being, you know, not everybody has the access to the IT support maybe that I know we have and so on. So as AI continues to evolve, I think finding ways to lower the barriers toward to experimentation is going to be something important. The other takeaway that I want to point out, or one of the other ones, is this idea of competing commitments. Originally, our experiments were around, like, let's create friction for the AI agent. Let's make it jump through hoops and go back and forth and up and down and sideways. And by the way, in the end, that wasn't working anyway. But as we were talking about that, we were like, but we don't want to do that to the actual students in our classes. We don't want to make our classes unbearable to navigate for the 98% of students who are there to do the right thing. And so it was just this idea, right? We have these competing commitments. We want to uphold academic integrity, and yet at the same time, we want to create the types of learning experiences for actual students that we value as educators. And then this last one here is designing for multifaceted solutions. So some of the things that we tried maybe didn't create friction for the AI agent, but they helped us look through like, okay, well, this would definitely be something that would help prevent academic misconduct from just, you know, use of an LLM. So we were looking at solutions in all kinds of different ways, including, as Jill was talking about, building motivation, right? Classes that where students really understand why they're there and what they could potentially get out of it. So I saw someone had a quick question about lockdown browsers. We didn't actually test that within lockdown browsers because of some of our technical issues. I know other people have with varying degrees, but this is one of these ideas around competing commitments and multifaceted solutions. In the course that I teach, I would never use a lockdown browser. It just doesn't work with the kinds of assignments that I give. It doesn't work with the kind of class culture that I'm trying to create. So if someone else has good information, by the way, about lockdown browsers, that Padlet that I shared earlier would be a great place to share that, because I know that they are appropriate for other courses. So those are some of our unexpected takeaways. I really, one of the things I'm going to be doing a lot of thinking about this year is how do we start having these collaborative experiments in an ongoing way. So what we're going to do now is each one of us is going to give a quick, hey, what to do next? And again, if you have ideas, please put them on the Padlet. I'm going to turn it over to Tim because he does have some ideas about some of the technical things that could possibly be on the roadmap here for the future.
For the past 10 months, in fact, actually going back even further to the start of generative AI, my idea for the solution is pedagogy. How we change our assessment, how we change our assignments, the approach, how we motivate students. I think that's the key. But that being said, I did want to also look at what are some short-term solutions as far as blocking AI agents from entering the LMS system. And it took me 10 months, really 9 months, to come up with ideas of how to prevent that. And I built a fake platform to emulate an LMS system. And I would send these agents into it and try to see how I could detect them and how to block them. Now, what my findings are is that I'm able to block some agents, like the example video that I'll show in a moment is ChatGPT agent trying to enter into the web page to fill out the form, and it gets blocked immediately because I'm able to identify it, I'm able to block it at, I believe, 100% certainty. Now, some of the other browsers, such as Comet Perplexity, that one is stubborn because it will come into the LMS system, identifying itself as the user's browser. It will do its things, and after it's submitted everything, then you can identify it pretty easily as an AI agent. But it tries to hide itself. So what I did is in my platform, my testing platform, I built 11 methods of detecting an agentic, I'll call it an attack because that's essentially what's happening. But with this ChatGPT, and some of them are very easy, and I will say 100% certain that they can be identified and blocked. But the issue is, as soon as I block out, say, 5 agents from coming in, different tools, somebody makes a 6th one, and a 7th, and a 20th, and a 30th. And it's going to be really difficult to block out all of them. But the idea is this. If we can block out the most common ones, so let's just say ChatGPT agent, and that cuts down on 70%. Say 70% of students are using ChatGPT agents to come into the LMS. We can block out those 70%. That's pretty big. That's huge. Now, that's not to say other agents won't slip past and get in there, because that certainly will happen. But this is a short-term solution. This is a 30-second video. If you could go ahead and play it, please, Jillian. Or I mean, Anna. That's me doing it to demonstrate that the form does work. And then I go into ChatGPT agent and I tell it navigate to the website and submit the form. As soon as it gets there, it's going to get identified, and you'll see that a red block comes up saying access denied, and then it comes back and says, hey, I can't get in there. So that was a successful demonstration of blocking out the ChatGPT agent. Now, the way that this is used, unfortunately, as faculty, we cannot block agents. I have not found a solution for that. The technology that I've developed is instituted at the server level, either by the LMS companies or by the college or school institution IT department. But as educators, I haven't found a solution where we can block out agents. And I don't know if that's ever going to happen. So that's, again, is another reason why I believe, and the rest of us on this panel, that pedagogy is the true solution to these agent issues. Should I integrate AI? And that's one thing to consider. If you can have an assignment that AI is part of it, students are no longer cheating when they're using AI. So the idea is this. What are the objectives of the assignment? And then number two, can AI be used to achieve the same objectives? Can a student use AI and achieve the same objectives? If the answer is yes or maybe, you start looking at the assignment and say, okay, so how could I integrate AI into this? For example, in my course, I have a chatbot assignment in which students have to create a chatbot. So they have to, number one, determine on what topic they want to cover that's within my course. Then they need to go out and research and find 3 legitimate sources as the project knowledge of the chatbot. They have a conversation with the chatbot. They verify facts with 3 sources, and then they write an analysis paper. So they're learning a lot of things such as research, analysis, how to create a chatbot, how to write the prompt, and then they write the analysis paper and the citations included with it. So that's a pretty robust assignment because now using AI for the assignment is no longer cheating. That's a QR code to ARAD framework that helps guide through that process. And I'll put the link to that also in the chat. And I will go ahead and pass it on to the next slide.
I think this one's you, Jill.
All right. Well, I kind of buried the lead earlier. So, I mean, I think my next step is a little bit simplified because I've already mentioned it, but I'm back to the name that skill, claim that skill. What you're teaching in your courses, be it face-to-face, online, blended, whatever the modality, you are teaching skill sets that employers want. We know that there's a gap growing, but I think some of that skill gap that is growing and and those upskilling that need to happen for future employers and employees is that the people who are looking for jobs don't know that they already have the skill sets and they can't communicate that to potential employers because they don't know what skills they learned in college. So if we are taking it upon ourselves, and I know it's kind of one more thing to do, but it's not changing your whole course around. You're still teaching what you should be teaching because it's your discipline. You know your discipline way more than I, as an ID, will ever know. But you're taking the content you already have, and as it's organically changing, taking that extra step of thinking about what skill sets, and again, naming them using that, what employers are looking for mindset, um, and mapping it to the assignments you already have or the assignments you're making as you're making them, I think is a potential way and a super valuable way of helping students seeing the specific coursework, not just the course in general and not just the degree overall, because I think what the Pew survey really shows is that they want the degree because that will help them with earning potential, but the value of the degree, what they're getting out of the degree in the specific coursework, is they're not seeing the relevance of that. So taking that extra step of just making that relevance clear, I think is vital. And then communicating that however you best communicate with your students. And again, we gave a couple of examples in there. Another element that I think I'm very much if I can do one thing and get 2 things done, I'm going to do that. Like always uh, try and double up that payoff if I can. Again, I'm very much in the quality matters space. We at FSW are going through a process of, as we're building online courses, we're putting anything into course maps, we're writing objectives, we're connecting it to our assignments, things like that, because that's what our institution says we're going to do. If you're already doing something like that using a rubric of that capacity or, that type of process, again, to use that to your advantage, you're already kind of mapping out this course. Maybe look at making your module objectives, unit objectives, whatever those are, maybe baking in skill sets into that terminology so that as you're writing out those objectives, the skill sets are already present and you don't have to worry about mapping it because you've already mapped it, right? And then you just have to be more explicit with your students about how those specific skill sets can be relevant to them in their future career paths. One thing I did that, again, you have to know your discipline, but you already do, so you don't have to worry about that. Like I said, I teach medieval European history. I'm an adjunct. I taught a course on the fall of Rome and the rise of Gothic tribes last semester, and I tried to make it a resume builder. It was very experimental, so, what my students think, a little up in the air. But every time I made an assignment, I used chat to be like, okay, help me identify the specific skill sets that could be built using this assignment that I've already created, and give me some ideas of how this could benefit careers, right? So, it was talking about archiving, it was talking about, communication skills, it was talking about, all of these things. And I just bake that into like right above the instructions in my Why It Matters section. And I think the students really found that beneficial because it was giving them ideas. It's like, oh, I could go into this area of study. I could do this area. I could do this. And I thought that was really helpful. So that's my thought process.
I love that. Instructional designers for the win, right? I mean, and you're a faculty member also, and a great one, but I really appreciate the way that you shared that. And I see some really fun conversation happening in the chat along the same things. And back to what Tim had said earlier about different ways to implement AI and so on. I'm going to shift gears here and talk about a couple of different types of considerations to think about going forward, more from that admin side, though I'm very excited by the pedagogy conversation. One thing to think about as an institution might be your technology acceptable use policy. I made some recommendations to our CIO for just some wording changes that might make it very clear that we do not invite AI agents into our learning management system. And I'll say this too, cheating isn't the only problem with an AI agent going into your learning management system. They're unpredictable. They can be easily kind of hacked, and they could have destructive properties and start to get inside of your IT tenants. So I would say definitely this is something your IT department wants to know about. I personally, if I were in charge, I would say faculty, staff, don't access any of our internal systems with your AI agent. And some people might be there just because they think it's a fun experiment to create a new kind of to-do list. But I would highly recommend get your security people thinking about that and how to express it appropriately in that technology acceptable use. There's some really good thinking happening about this. I mostly access it on LinkedIn, although I know that's not the only place where people are talking about this. But there's a professor who I really like. Her name is Anna Mills, and she is really, really encouraging us, like, don't give up on the asking people to do the right thing part of this, right? So I know many of us have contacted the learning management system companies and said, hey, we're super concerned about this. We think the future of online education is possibly being compromised. And we've gotten mixed responses, but none of them have been like, don't worry, we're taking care of it. So far, I don't know of that being the response that anybody has gotten. And so I would encourage you, if you are inclined, if you have a relationship with the learning management company, at least think about talking to them about what they're doing. I know the Modern Language Association put out a very strongly worded statement about AI agents. If you are in the disciplines guided by the MLA, it might be something that you want to have a look at. Whether your security people can implement solutions like the ones that Tim have devised and so on, I don't know. That's not really my area, but I think what he pointed out is an important one, that like, how much time do we want to invest in cat and mouse, and how much time do we want to invest in solutions that have more durability? So this is a time too where if you're like, oh, but what about this? I would want to try that, or this worked at our institution and so on. This is the link to that Padlet. I put the link in there earlier in the chat. I'll do that again. So if you, I tried to follow the chat as best I could, and I think there were some good ideas being shared in there. But if you want to put some more ideas in the Padlet, and if you want to, if you were like, hey, I'll experiment with you guys, put your email in there, and I'm all for continuing some experimentation. So it looks like questions are starting to stack up. So I'm going to end my part of it there. I'll put the Padlet link into the chat, and maybe we can work on a little bit of Q&A.